This is Chapter 5. At Tier 3, maintenance stops being a side conversation and becomes one of the most important leadership responsibilities in the shop, not because maintenance is dramatic, but because it quietly determines whether trust compounds or erodes over time. Most customers don't walk in thinking about maintenance plans. They walk in thinking today will be simple. An oil change, a quick visit, a box to check so life can move on. And most shops are structured to reinforce that expectation, squeezing the appointment in, labeling it easy, and hoping nothing complicates the day. But reality doesn't care about expectations. Time has been working on the vehicle long before it arrived in your lot. Fluids age, wear patterns form, small deferrals stack quietly until momentum is the only thing keeping the car feeling normal. And when the inspection reveals that truth, the way you handle it determines everything that follows. This is where capable advisors create resistance without meaning to, not through dishonesty, but through surprise. One service mentioned here, another added there. Maintenance introduced like an afterthought instead of a plan. The customer doesn't hear responsibility. They hear randomness. And randomness feels expensive, unstable, and untrustworthy. At Tier 3, the problem is not maintenance itself. The problem is how maintenance is introduced. Customers don't hate maintenance. They hate feeling blindsided. They hate unpredictable bills. They hate the sense that every visit might turn into a surprise they didn't budget for or mentally prepare for. When that happens, even reasonable recommendations feel like traps, and customers protect themselves by declining everything except the bare minimum. That protection is not a rejection of care. It's a rejection of instability. This chapter exists because advanced advisors understand something most of the industry never operationalizes. Predictability is the real product. When customers know what's coming, when costs are spaced, planned, and explained in advance, maintenance stops feeling like selling and starts feeling like leadership. Tier 3 mastery turns maintenance into rhythm. Rhythm creates trust. Trust creates scheduled revenue instead of spikes and crashes. And scheduled revenue is how shops stop living in emergency mode and start building lifetime relationships. This chapter is not about getting everything today. It's about removing surprise for the next 12 months, so customers stay calm, bays stay full, and loyalty is built on clarity instead of pressure. That is the standard we're setting in Chapter 5. Surprise creates resistance. Plans create trust. At Tier 3, this truth stops being a slogan and becomes a measurable operating reality. Shops don't lose maintenance work because customers don't care. They lose it because maintenance shows up as random impact instead of predictable rhythm. Most customers are not opposed to spending money on their vehicle. What they are opposed to is being surprised by it. Surprise forces defensive thinking. Defensive thinking leads to delay, selective hearing, and blanket decline. Even reasonable services sound suspicious when they arrive without context or timing. This is why maintenance conversations fail quietly. An advisor mentions brake fluid here, a filter there, maybe coolant if the moment feels right. None of it is technically wrong. But to the customer, it feels disconnected, like a series of unrelated asks that weren't part of the deal when they handed over the keys. The customer doesn't experience that as care. They experience it as instability. Plans fix that. A plan tells the customer that nothing is random. It tells them you are thinking beyond today. It tells them that costs are spaced intentionally, not piled on opportunistically. And most importantly, it tells them that they are not going to be surprised later. At Tier 3, you are not selling maintenance items. You are selling predictability. Predictability allows customers to budget. Predictability allows them to say yes without fear. Predictability turns maintenance into something that feels responsible instead of reactive. This is why advanced advisors never treat maintenance as a same-day decision problem. Maintenance is a time problem, not a persuasion problem. When timing is clear, resistance drops without effort. Surprise forces customers to protect themselves. Plans invite them to participate. That's the shift. And once you see it, maintenance stops being awkward and starts becoming one of the most stabilizing forces in your operation. So here's the question that tells you whether your maintenance conversations are building loyalty or quietly pushing customers away. Are you selling maintenance or are you removing surprise by building a plan? That question matters because selling maintenance puts you in a defensive posture immediately. Selling sounds like persuasion. Persuasion sounds like pressure. And pressure makes customers brace themselves before you've even finished the sentence. Removing surprise does the opposite. When you frame maintenance as a plan, You are not asking the customer to decide everything today. You are giving them visibility into the future. You are saying, here's what's coming, here's when, and here's why, so nothing catches you off guard. Most resistance disappears at that moment. Customers stop asking, do I need this right now? They start asking, when should we plan that? That shift is everything. If your process forces customers to decide maintenance item by item, visit by visit, you are training them to say no repeatedly. Each no reinforces the idea that maintenance is optional, random, and negotiable. Over time, that erodes trust and turns your shop into a place people visit only when something breaks. If your process builds a rhythm, clear time buckets, clear outcomes, clear next touchpoints, you train customers to think long-term. Long-term thinking creates loyalty. Loyalty creates scheduled visits. Scheduled visits create predictable revenue. So ask yourself honestly, when a DVI reveals maintenance, do you feel the urge to get what you can today? Or do you feel disciplined enough to design a plan that makes sense over the next 12 months? Because customers don't become lifetime customers because you convince them once. They become lifetime customers because you removed uncertainty from their future. Hold on to that distinction. The next part of this chapter shows you how to build a maintenance rhythm that customers follow willingly because it feels like adulthood, not sales. At Tier 3, maintenance planning stops being a recommendation problem and becomes a future stability problem. Most shops live visit to visit. They react to what shows up today and hope tomorrow cooperates. That reactive posture is why maintenance conversations feel awkward, inconsistent, and often avoided. Advisors feel the tension because they're trying to solve a long-term problem inside a short-term moment. The surprise removal system TM exists to fix that mismatch. The first discipline is separating urgency from importance. Not everything that matters is due today, and treating it that way destroys credibility. When customers hear urgency where they don't feel danger, they assume motive. When motive is questioned, trust collapses. Tier 3 advisors resist that impulse. They slow the conversation and label time honestly. You identify what truly belongs in now, what belongs in next, and what belongs in planned. This immediately lowers resistance because the customer can see you're not trying to win everything at once. You are organizing reality, not inflating it. The second discipline is building an annual cadence instead of a single decision. Most customers drive roughly 15,000 miles per year. That fact alone gives you structure if you're willing to use it. Instead of treating every visit like an isolated event, you design a rhythm the customer can live inside. 3 services per year, 2 quick visits they can wait for, 1 annual drop-off that deserves time and focus. This cadence matters because it removes friction. Customers don't resist maintenance when they know what to expect. They resist when they feel every visit could explode into a surprise bill. When you introduce the rhythm, you change the emotional frame from what are you selling me today to how does my year look. That shift is the heart of Tier 3 maintenance leadership. The annual drop-off is especially important. It is not about capturing more labor. It is about protecting quality. Alignments, deeper inspections, filters, fluid condition checks, these suffer when rushed. When you explain the drop-off as a quality decision instead of a convenience sacrifice, customers understand it as care, not inconvenience. From there, you anchor longer-term planning. Every other year, around 30,000-mile increments, larger services are expected, not surprising. Transmission service, coolant exchanges, deeper driveline attention. When these are introduced early as rungs on a ladder instead of cliffs, customers don't panic, they prepare. The third discipline is translating maintenance into outcomes, not services. Customers don't buy fluids. They buy reliability. They don't buy filters. They buy clean airflow and comfort. They don't buy maintenance schedules. They buy fewer breakdowns, fewer emergencies, and fewer days derailed by surprise. When you tie each planned service to an outcome that matters, stability, safety, longevity, you stop sounding like you're adding work and start sounding like you're reducing future pain. Then comes the most skipped step in the industry, writing the plan and scheduling the next touchpoint. A plan that lives only in conversation dies the moment the customer leaves. Memory fades. Context disappears. Surprise returns. Tier 3 advisors put the plan in writing, label the timeframes, and lock the next visit before the customer leaves, not as pressure, but as follow-through. This is how maintenance stops being negotiated and starts being followed. The surprise removal system TM does not increase the size of the plan. It increases the believability of the plan, and believable plans are what turn maintenance into scheduled revenue instead of sporadic spikes. This chapter establishes a Tier 3 standard for maintenance that replaces randomness with rhythm and surprise with trust. First, you stop presenting maintenance as a list of services and start presenting it as a 12-month roadmap. You label time honestly, separate now from later, and remove the fear that every visit could turn into an ambush. Second, you build a repeatable service cadence. 2 quick in-and-out visits per year and 1 planned annual drop-off. This rhythm protects quality, reduces friction, and gives customers something they can follow instead of something they have to defend against. Third, you translate maintenance into outcomes customers care about and put the plan in writing. Written plans remove ambiguity. Scheduled touchpoints remove procrastination. Together, they turn trust into predictability. Tier 3 maintenance leadership is not about convincing customers to do more today. It is about making sure nothing becomes a surprise tomorrow. When surprise disappears, resistance fades. When resistance fades, customers stop shopping and start committing. This is how revenue becomes schedulable instead of volatile. This is how bays stay full without panic. This is how customers stop asking, "What do I need today?" and start asking, "What's next on my plan?" The challenge is clear and enforceable. On your next oil change, do not offer a menu. Offer the roadmap. Label the year, build the rhythm. Write it down. Schedule the next touchpoint before the customer leaves. Because plans don't just sell maintenance. Plans create loyalty. And loyalty is what turns a shop into a home. That is 12-month maintenance planning at Tier 3.